In Part 1, a sudden fire on the ship leads to an unsuccessful mission. They could not record any footage for evidence and missed Mujin. Hai-jin shouts out for a discovered gun. In reality, it was the very gun used by her father's killer. She was curious to witness Captain Cha's reaction upon seeing the weapon. Meanwhile, Mujin is angrily back at his headquarters, due to not being informed about the mission. Taiju inquired why Hai-jin had not informed them. Elsewhere, Hai-jin persistently attempted to contact Mujin through a secret number, but he deliberately ignored her calls, recognizing her as the caller. In the police station, they interrogated the person arrested from the ship, but unfortunately, none of them dared to speak out of fear for their safety. Captain Cha grew suspicious about the shooting incident that allowed Mujin to escape. Consequently, he meticulously inspected all his men's firearms and discovered that not a single bullet was missing. Curious Pill questioned why Captain Cha was so determined to apprehend Mujin. In response, he revealed the operation aimed at capturing Mujin, who had been their primary target for the past 11 years, as the leader of the city of Incheon's largest criminal organization. Despite having control over drug trafficking in South Korea, Mujin possesses exceptional skills in concealing evidence, which has kept him from getting apprehended. When Hai-jin came across a photograph of her father, Pildu explained that the person depicted was Mujin's closest friend, who tragically lost his life 5 years ago. Subsequently, Hai-jin and her friends gathered at a cafe, enjoying some soju as they discussed Captain Cha's eagerness to capture Mujin. One among them mentioned that Captain Cha's determination stemmed from the fact that Mujin had taken the life of his dearest friend, sparking a desire for revenge. Up until that moment, they remained unaware of the identity of this cherished friend. Hai-jin then briefly excused herself to make another attempt at contacting Mujin, and finally, he answered her call. She expressed her regret for not having had the opportunity to explain earlier, owing to the strict mission. She proceeded to inform him that there were 3 hidden cameras pointing at his hotel, a revelation that greatly surprised Mujin, indicating the possible presence of a traitor within his ranks. Meanwhile, Captain Cha is sorting through his old documents, curiously holding onto a photograph of Hai-jin's father. Simultaneously, Mujin is busy dismantling all the police cameras installed in his hotel. A police officer who was aware of this activity promptly reported it to Captain Cha. Upon hearing this, his suspicions of a traitor within his team grew stronger. On another front, Ganji appears to be very excited as he anticipates carrying out a mission he's been planning for 5 years. Shortly thereafter, Ganji and his associates launch an assault on the Dongjun practice area, apprehending Taiju but refraining from killing him. Meanwhile, Captain Cha and his team received a telephone order to head to the Dongjun area, but by the time they arrived, they were already too late. Taiju, who sustained serious injuries, remains tight-lipped and refuses to divulge any information. The situation in the area deteriorates rapidly, with a chilling message scrawled in blood in the midst of the practice area. Soon after, Pildu reports to Captain Cha that at least 4 individuals have been killed and dozens left injured elsewhere. Mujin is angered to know that his practice area has been attacked, but Secretary Kong advises him to exercise caution. The location has no legal ties to him, and getting caught in the training area would be dangerous. The police continue their search for the attackers and eventually uncover evidence of a new type of drug. They attempt to search the surroundings for witnesses, but fear silences everyone, including the victims. Nevertheless, Pil assures Hai-jin that the events unfolding there are undoubtedly horrifying and pledges to protect her should they become entangled in such a situation. The following day, a funeral was held for the victims. Hai-jin attended but wore a helmet to avoid being recognized. On her way back home, she unexpectedly crossed paths with Captain Cha and Pil. Meanwhile, Captain Cha encountered Mujin at the funeral home, and it was evident that they harbored grudges against each other. Captain Cha expressed his determination to bring this to an end swiftly, expressing frustration at Mujin's continued evasion. In response, Mujin laughed and asserted that Captain Shaw would never be able to capture him. The next day, a drug unit member named Daesu finally manages to find the face of the person who attacked Dong Jun's training center, and the culprit is Gongji. Captain Shaw, who saw him, explained that he used to be a member of Dongju, but 4 years ago he was reported to have died in the training area. Captain Shaw is sure that after this Mujin move, he instructs that Mango to be released as bait. Hygiene protested at the risk of sacrificing many lives, but Captain Shaw didn't care. Elsewhere, Mujin gets a message from Hygiene telling Captain Shaw's plan. Seeing this, he cancelled his mission. At the police station, Captain Shaw and his team are confused as to why there has been no action from Dongju. Then he laughs and says that Mujin will collapse by himself because someone has betrayed his organization. Mujin again gets a message from Hygiene that there is a traitor who will meet Captain Shaw. Meanwhile, Tiju, who gets into his car, finds a letter along with a new type of drug, with a written invitation to meet with the sender. Tiju goes there. On the other hand, Hygiene goes upstairs wearing a full-face helmet to spy on them and observe Mujin's traitor more clearly unexpectedly upon arrival at the top. She encounters Pildu, who attacks her and realizes that this is all just a trap from Captain Shaw and Pil. Though Captain Shaw wants to know who the traitor of his team is by revealing Taiju as his bait, he does that. He does this out of suspicion towards Hygiene, as a significant amount of data has been leaked since her arrival. Meanwhile, Hygiene, feeling distressed, reported to Mujin that Taiju had recently met someone. She urged him to exercise caution and refrain from impulsive actions. In the morning, Hygiene received information about the owner of the gun used in her Fat Her's murder. Fueled by a desire for revenge, she hurried to Captain Shaw's office, carrying a knife. She inquired about Jiansu's identity. However, when Pildu entered the room, she abandoned her intent to attack. Captain Shaw revealed that Jiangsu was his best friend who had passed away after joining their unit, and the person responsible for the killing was Dong Hoon, her father. Following this revelation, Hygiene approached Mujin to inquire if her father had ever killed a police officer. He denied it and asserted that Captain Shaw would stop at nothing to incriminate them, as he considered Captain Shaw to be a cunning individual. Upon returning to the office, Pildu attempted to persuade her to join him for a soju gathering later that night. Unfortunately, she declined his invitation. She overheard some of his friends in the room teasing him, presuming he was interested in her but had been rejected. In reality, Hygiene rejected the invitation because she was searching for Gongji. Hygiene and Pildu followed Gongji's car until it reached an old abandoned factory. Without hesitation, they entered the building. Before long, Gongji arrived at the location to negotiate with Mango, but it turned out to be a trap set by Gongji himself, who subsequently launched an attack on them. Mu Jin, hanging out at the cafe, realized that the people around were targeting him, but he attacked them first. On the contrary, Hygiene and Pildu were eventually caught by Gongji, who had now discovered Hygiene's true identity and laughed at her for joining the police force. Annoyed by this, Hygiene challenged him to a fight. At the police station, Pildu's partner informed Captain Shaw that Pildu was unreachable, prompting them to track his location. Meanwhile, Mujin succeeded in defeating Gongji's men, but he was taken aback when he received a photo of Hygiene from Gongji, threatening to kill her. Without hesitation, Mujin rushed to the location. It turned out that Gongji's words were not just a threat. He had placed Pildu and Hygiene in a car and was lowering a massive iron press toward it. Thankfully, Mujin arrived just in time to rescue them. Suddenly, the sound of a police car siren echoed, causing Mujin to quickly flee the scene. After Captain Shaw and his team arrived, they became suspicious of Mujin's presence there. However, Pildu and Hygiene were discovered in a helpless situation. Taiju met Mujin, who expressed deep disappointment with his impulsive decision to go alone. Upon hearing this, Mujin scolded Taiju and compared him to Hygiene's courage. She had helped him while on the ship and had risked her cover, whereas Taiju could only grumble about the situation. Pildu pressured Captain Cha to arrest Ganji, but Captain Cha replied that Ganji could be apprehended at any time, but the one he suspected is Hyjin. However, Pildu believed Hyjin was a highly trustworthy individual. Pildu enters the treatment room and finds Hyjin unconscious. Pil had no clue that the woman who had resisted leaving and fought for him would be a suspect. Afterward, Pildu and his team act swiftly, searching for any leads on Ganji's whereabouts. Simultaneously, Donju Gang also seeks information about Ganji's location. Meanwhile, Pildu and his team successfully capture one of Ganji's men, extracting information about the whereabouts of the remaining members. At the same time, Donju's gang continues their quest to find Ganji but comes up empty-handed. Taiju then reports to Mujin that he hasn't been able to locate Ganji yet. Upon hearing this, Mujin becomes suspicious of Taiju, wondering if he might be a traitor hiding Ganji's whereabouts. That night, Hyjin remains unresponsive, having a disturbing dream where she sees her estranged father, who refuses to turn back to her. Frustrated, she attempts to scream until she suddenly awakens. Surprisingly, Pildu, who is by her side, comforts her. He opens up about his past, sharing that he became a cop because his younger brother tragically passed away after someone spiked his drink at a club, leading to a fatal heart attack. Although he doesn't know the culprit, he is determined to apprehend all drug lords. Following this conversation, Pildu invites Hyjin to celebrate her recovery with his fellow police friends. Hyjin, who was once reserved, has grown closer to them. Unaware of them, Taiju secretly observes them and reports them to Mujin. Aware of this, Mujin ensures that Hyjin's cover remains intact. At the police station, Captain Cha examines the car that collided with the Crusher on the fateful night. During the inspection, he discovers something unusual, prompting him to order an investigation into all of Hyjin's phone records. Simultaneously, Mujin contacts Hyjin, instructing her to pack her belongings because he intends to send her abroad. And she refused because she was determined to complete her mission. The next morning, Hyjin returned to work and joined her team, which had successfully apprehended several suspects from the Ganji gang. Pildu appeared, expressing optimism about capturing Ganji soon. Suddenly, a man named Jo Jinsei, a police detective who had once pursued her father 5 years ago, approached Hyjin. Their close interaction caught Captain Cha's attention, leading him to inquire if they already knew each other. Jinsei responded by saying that he had encountered Hyjin during his tenure as a serious crimes agent and handed her his business card, inviting her for a meal. Following this, Captain Cha invited Jinsei for a private conversation and queried whether he had located Dong Hoon's daughter and the sudden reappearance of Dong Hoon's missing firearm. Surprisingly, Jinsei told that he had no information about Dong Hoon's daughter. Later, as Jinsei expressed his desire to leave, Hyjin approached him, questioning why he was pretending not to know her. Jinsei learned that Mujin had placed her undercover within the police force, and Jinsei threatened Mujin to expose her true identity unless he provided him with more drugs. In the evening, Hyjin confronted Mango, who had betrayed her by divulging information to Ganji. She presented him with two options: either face arrest on attempted murder charges or confess to Mujin that he was a subordinate of Ganji who had orchestrated an attack on his organization. Under duress, Mango eventually disclosed crucial information about Ganji's whereabouts to Hyjin, which she promptly relayed to Mujin. Unexpectedly, it transpired that Mango reported this incident to Ganji, prompting Ganji to contact Captain Cha, aware of the captain's desire to apprehend Mujin. Next, Gang Ji made an offer, proposing that he would reveal Mujin's whereabouts if Mujin agreed to let him go. Meanwhile, Mujin was getting ready to head to the location Hyjin had provided, but Taiju had suspicions that it might be a trap, especially since the information came from Hyjin. Despite these concerns, Mujin decided to leave because he had trust in Hyjin. He instructed Taiju to stay behind, as someone needed to look after their gang members if something happened to him. The day of the meeting arrived, and Ganji, who was already at the location, attempted to call Captain Cha. However, Captain Cha didn't answer because he and his team were in hiding, preparing to apprehend both Ganji and Mujin simultaneously. Not long after, Mujin and his gang arrived, and a heated battle between the two gangs ensued. After a few men had fallen, Captain Cha gave the signal for his officers to move in and make arrests. Meanwhile, Ganji and Mujin engaged in a fierce confrontation. Haijin wanted to assist Mujin by aiming her gun at Ganji, but she refrained from shooting when she saw Ganji go down. Unexpectedly, Ganji produced a concealed penknife from his shoe and relentlessly attacked Mujin. Haijin then aimed her gun at Ganji and urged Mujin to escape. However, instead of being frightened, Ganji laughed at her, assuming she was naive and unaware of the true situation. Simultaneously, Pildu approached Haijin and Ganji, advising her to lower her gun. Aware that there were other police officers nearby, Ganji decided to spill the beans. However, Haijin suddenly shot Ganji dead. On the other hand, while fleeing, Mujin crossed paths with Captain Cha, who was about to capture him. However, Taidyu, who had a car, came to Mujin's rescue just in time. They rushed Mujin to a tunnel, where he could temporarily relinquish his responsibilities to Taiju and tend to his wounds. After covering a considerable distance, Mujin finally reached a temple, where he received treatment over the next month. Meanwhile, Haijin, who had taken a life for the first time, was haunted by her actions. That night, Pildu visited her home to offer her some food, aware of Haijin's lingering trauma. He advised her against staying alone when the first snowfall arrived. He attempted to console her without mentioning the past tragedy. Haijin fears that her secret might be revealed. She fabricated a story to protect her disguise. So, she told Pil about a harrowing incident from her past, recounting a near assault by Ganji and being subjected to drugs, revealing the scars on her hands as evidence. She disclosed that this experience had driven her to become a police officer. Pildu felt sympathy and had no suspicions upon hearing her painful confession. That time, Mujin finally recognized his old friend, who had become a Buddhist monk. He suggested that Mujin rest a few more days at the temple until he fully recovered. Simultaneously, Captain Cha assembled his team to search for Mujin in all areas within their suspected radius. On another front, Haijin received a letter addressed in Jiwoo's name. When she opened it, she lingers by its contents. A photograph of her father in a police uniform bearing the name Yoon Dong-hoon, the gun owner's name. This revelation instantly triggered a recollection of Ganji's comments, suggesting that he thought Haijin was naive. It became evident that the letter was indeed from the late Ganji. Suddenly, Haijin received a voice message from Mujin requesting a meeting. When she arrived at the temple where Mujin was staying, she inquired about her father's profession while displaying a photo of him in a police uniform. Mujin told her that Captain Cha sent her father to spy on the organization, but later chosen to join the gang, even saving Mujin's life. Therefore, they had developed a close bond, and her father had adopted several aliases for his own safety. Mujin recounted how secretly he had often observed Haijin's father. He walked out with a joyful smile, bringing copious amounts of food. During this moment, Mujin discovered her father had a daughter and resolved to look after her. Up until this point, the pursuit of Mujin had been fruitless for Captain Cha. He was frustrated, on the edge of losing hope, but Pildu, on the other hand, continued to provide him with encouragement. Meanwhile, Mujin contacted Taiju with the intention of having Captain Cha eliminated, as he believed that Haijin was incapable of completing her mission. Shortly thereafter, Pildu, ensuring Captain Cha's safety in his inebriated state, escorted him back to his apartment. He left without knowing that a stranger had entered Captain Cha's apartment. And when Pildu was gone, the stranger viciously attacked Captain Cha, repeatedly stabbing him. Coincidentally, Haijin, who was heading to his apartment, crossed paths with the assailant, though she did not harbor any suspicions at the time. Her world was turned upside down when she noticed the doorknobs smeared with blood. In a sudden and shocking turn of events, Captain Cha opened fire on Hyjin, mistaking her for a messenger sent by Mujin to assassinate him. However, Hyjin revealed her true intentions, seeking vengeance for her father's death. Upon hearing this, Captain Cha fell into silence. Summoning the last of his strength, he handed Hyjin an envelope and urged her to flee before the authorities arrived. In her state of confusion, Hyjin followed his instructions, and as if on cue, Pil-du returned to Captain Cha's apartment. Hyjin made her escape. Upon reaching the car, Hyjin reviewed the file given to her, discovering that her father had once operated undercover as a police officer to apprehend Mujin. His disguise had been exceptionally convincing, leading him to become close friends with Mujin. On Mujin's birthday, her father had gifted him a lighter, which Mujin cherished dearly. Mujin never parted with this lighter, even when he inflicted harm on Mujin while holding it. Unknown to Mujin, there was a concealed monitoring device inside the lighter. Soon after, Mujin stumbled upon fragments of paper inside her father's typewriter, and it was in those pieces of paper that he finally realized her father's true identity as a police officer. It was a shocking revelation that someone he trusted so deeply had been deceiving him all along. Subsequently, Hyjin opened an envelope her father had prepared in case of his demise. The letter contained a heartfelt apology from her father for not being the best parent, expressing regret for not being able to witness her grow up and share special moments together. He wished to witness her love and marriage, to see her have a beautiful grandchild, even though those hopes would never come to fruition. His sole wish was for Hyjin to lead a joyful and fulfilling life. Upon reading this, Hyjin was overcome with tears, realizing that she had been living a lie all this time. As she absorbed this shocking truth, her body suddenly felt frail. On the contrary, Hyjin made the decision to remove the tattoo on her chest, as she had identified the person she intended to seek revenge against. Following this, she goes to the hospital to check Captain Cha's condition. Upon learning the truth, her heart filled with remorse as she arrived at the hospital. During her visit, she encountered Pil-du, who suspected the attack on Captain Cha might be connected to Mujin. Frustrated, Pil-du vowed to apprehend the perpetrators soon. As he inquired about Hyjin's well-being, a doctor and nurse suddenly emerged from the operating room. Thankfully, Captain Cha's surgery had been successful. That time, Taiju informed Mujin lingered that Captain Cha was safe and mentioned Hyjin's presence in time of the attack. In response, Mujin ordered Taiju to eliminate Captain Cha. Unbeknownst to them, Taiju was actually the one behind the attack on Captain Cha, nursing a severe hand injury, while Hyjin tended to a grazed hand from Captain Cha's bullet. At the police station, Pil-du examined various photos of the assault on Captain Cha. He had lingered on Hyjin's involvement in the incident when she shot Ganji but couldn't shake the thought. On another front, Mujin, still at the temple, received word from his secretary that he was implicated in Ganji's death. She cautioned him against acting recklessly. Finally, Mujin discovered that Pil-du had concealed evidence suggesting that Hyjin was Ganji's killer. Just as Hyjin was about to leave her home, she was ambushed by Taiju's men, who were on a mission to assassinate her. Fortunately, she managed to survive and eliminate all of her assailants. Taiju, who had entered her house before the attack, confessed that he had always wanted to kill someone who had betrayed Mujin, but Mujin had always taken matters into his own hands. Upon learning that Hyjin had attacked him with Taiju's injured hand, she finally managed to overpower him. In their final moments, he conceded that they weren't so different, being both killers. Hearing this, Hyjin fatally stabbed him. At the police station, all the investigative teams were engrossed in their tasks of searching for and collecting evidence. Suddenly, an unexpected call came in from a doctor who had previously treated injured individuals at Shanhuang Temple. Acting without hesitation, they rushed to the temple. However, just as they were preparing to depart, they were taken aback by the sudden appearance of Mujin, who had voluntarily surrendered. Following this, Pildu conducted an interrogation of Mujin. During the questioning, it was revealed that Mujin's fingerprints were found on the knife used to stab Ganji, implicating him as the sole mastermind behind the attack on Captain Cha. However, Mujin displayed an air of arrogance, confidently asserting that he would soon evade all charges. Upon learning of this, Haijin hurried to the police station and headed straight for the interrogation room. There, she declared her intent to ensure that Mujin would be imprisoned, utilizing all the evidence at their disposal, fueled by anger and resentment. Haijin firmly insisted that this time, Mujin would not escape justice. Meanwhile, one of the officers monitoring CCTV footage noticed a car leaving Captain Cha's residence and promptly recorded its license plate number. On a separate note, another officer handed Pildu a file, which appeared to contain call history records between Haijin and Captain Cha. It seemed that this file had been arranged in case anything untoward happened to him. As Haijin sought evidence pertaining to Ganji's attack from one of the officers involved in the investigation, she produced the knife used by Mujin, informing him that this crucial piece of evidence had been secured. Concurrently, other officers became aware that the license plate from the CCTV footage belonged to Haijin. They promptly informed Pildu about the license plate and shared the CCTV footage. After reviewing the tape, Pildu made the decision to arrest Haijin. However, she had successfully fled, taking with her the critical evidence of the knife used in the incident. Meanwhile, Mujin and his secretary left the police station, confident that without concrete evidence, Pildu would be unable to detain him. It appeared that Mujin deliberately tested Haijin's loyalty by his actions at the police station. Within the police station, all the investigative teams were in a state of panic. They meticulously examined Haijin's desk, wondering why she had been taken out of the police station. Contrary to their expectations, her actions were not driven by loyalty but by her desire to deal with him personally. She knew that Mujin had prohibited his men from searching for her because he anticipated her imminent arrival. Elsewhere, Pildu conducted an investigation into the condition of Captain Cha's residence. During his search, he discovered a funeral receipt envelope related to Haijin's parents. Upon noticing the address, he received an unexpected call from a colleague, instructing him to go to Haijin's house. Upon arrival, he was met with a gruesome scene. The house was in disarray, with blood spatters all around. As he inspected the house, Pildu couldn't locate any photo album of Haijin's father. Frustrated by this, he decided to head to the burial site. In the meantime, Haijin attended her mother's funeral and laid her father's ashes to rest before departing. She made a solemn vow to exact revenge. Along her path, she coincidentally crossed paths with Pildu, who pursued her relentlessly. Pildu implored Haijin to surrender and expressed his deep disappointment in her for deceiving him. With considerable effort, Pildu managed to handcuff Haijin and transport her to the police station. Her colleagues were livid upon her arrival and felt deeply let down by someone they had considered sister. They couldn't believe that she had played a role in the attack on Captain Cha, especially given her previous close relationship with the team. Mujin discovers that Haijin has been caught, but rather than feeling relieved, he instructs his secretary to secure her release. It becomes apparent that he has a personal vendetta and intends to take matters into his own hands to exact revenge on Haijin. At the police station, Pildu arrives at the holding cell and begins to suspect that Haijin may have stabbed Captain Cha out of fear of revealing her true identity. Haijin, who had remained silent, finally stands up and vehemently denies any involvement in Captain Cha's stabbing. However, she remains uncertain whether Pildu will believe her words. The following day, Secretary Khan visits Haijin and relays Mujin's message, urging her to meet with him as soon as she regains her freedom. Secretary Khan also convinces Pildu to take Haijin to the hospital, citing her need for medical attention. Initially reluctant, Pildu eventually agrees after Secretary Khan threatens to reveal that Don Hoon Gang had dispatched a spy to infiltrate the police force. On the other hand, Mujin has instructed his subordinates to prepare to retrieve Haijin. Upon her arrival at the hospital, Haijin receives medical treatment from a doctor and nurse. Interestingly, the nurse turns out to be the woman Haijin had saved when she overdosed at a club, highlighting a previous connection between them. Pildu receives news that Captain Cha has regained consciousness from his coma. He rushes to Captain Cha's side and informs him that Haijin is the one who attempted to kill him. In response, Captain Cha discloses information about a former Dongju member named Zhang Su, who had died 5 years ago. He reveals that Haijin is Zhang Su's daughter and has joined Dongju to uncover her father's killer. Consequently, Pildu learns that Haijin did not stab Captain Cha. Before departing, Captain Cha instructs Pildu to assist Haijin. Simultaneously, Haijin's handcuffs release and the female nurse discreetly hands her a car key, advising her to exit through a side door. As she was preparing to leave, she was suddenly attacked by Mujin's men, but she skillfully defeated her assailants and made her way directly to the parking lot. Out of the blue, Pildu approached and attempted to stop Haijin, revealing that he was already aware of everything. He insisted that she stay, but she remained determined to seek revenge. Unintentionally, Pildu placed handcuffs on her wrists, leading them to a heated argument. Before long, Mujin's men arrived, encircling them. Fortunately, they swiftly jumped into their car, accelerated away, and left Mujin's henchmen. The next day, while preparing for Taiju's memorial service, Mujin received word from his associates that Haijin had managed to escape. Meanwhile, Pildu had brought Haijin to a seaside house. Once inside, he assisted her in tending to her wounds and offered her advice about the destructive power of holding onto grudges. Upon hearing this, Haijin became emotional, shedding tears as she poured out her feelings. Pildu reassured her that he would stand by her side until the end, emphasizing that she didn't have to face everything alone. Elsewhere, Mujin found himself reminiscing about his past when he stumbled upon a gun. While Taiju informed him that Dong Hoon was planning to meet his daughter, as per Mujin's directive to confront him in front of his daughter's apartment door. In the midst of his daydreams, Secretary Kong suddenly entered to speak with Mujin, informing him that an arrest warrant had been issued in his name. She suggested that Mujin consider fleeing abroad. In a fit of frustration, he abruptly tossed a photo of himself and Jiangsu to the floor. Secretary Kong exited the room. On the contrary, when Pildu awoke, he believed that Haijin had escaped and abandoned him. However, he soon discovered she was down by the beach, enjoying the morning breeze. Following this, they hurriedly made their way to the Incheon police headquarters, but their car came to a halt at a red traffic light. Haijin expressed her intention to heed Pildu's advice. Pildu had vowed to stand by her side no matter what while holding Haijin's hand. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted when someone from the adjacent car opened fire at Pildu. She swiftly disarmed the assailant and proceeded to rendezvous with Mujin. Upon their arrival at the headquarters, Haijin brandished the gun, ordering the guard to open the door, which ignited a conflict between them. After successfully defeating all of Mujin's henchmen, Haijin finally confronted Troy Mujin, the man responsible for her father's death. Summoning the last of her strength, she pointed the gun at Mujin and demanded to know why he had taken her father's life. When she spotted a photo of her father lying on the ground, she carefully placed it in her pocket. He says he really likes her. A woman unafraid of anything. Haijin launched an attack, resulting in a fierce struggle between them. Evidently, Mujin proved to be a tough opponent for her. He managed to knock her out very easily. As Mujin moved in to finish her off, Haijin somehow managed to rise to her feet and fatally stabbed him, ultimately avenging her father. The other day, Haijin visited her parents' graves and placed a photograph of herself alongside her father. Shortly thereafter, she paid her respects at Pildu's grave as well.